Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muliwanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville and the beautiful island of Staten in New York City. I'm really excited to introduce to you one of my producers here on the podcast this summer. Please welcome to the show, Nicole Belcastro. Hey, Nicole, how are you?
Hi, Jed. I'm good. How are you?
I am wonderful. I was so blessed this summer to be able to work with Nicole. She's an incredibly talented young woman studying at Emerson College here in Boston. And Nicole came to me at the beginning of the summer and said, hey, I would love to do a series on school libraries. Can you tell us what inspired that idea?
Of course. I did a story during my spring semester at Emerson, and within research for that story, I learned that just in Boston alone, 40% of public schools don't even have school libraries anymore. And then within further research, I learned across the country that so many school libraries are being taken away, they're losing their funding. So I really wanted to highlight those who do the job and just how important the libraries are and what resources they offer for students.
You know, you're absolutely right. I think I shared with you, Nicole, that the library in my middle school saved me. Because I was one of those kids with a lot of extra energy. I would finish my work really quickly, and then I'd be a distraction. And thankfully, the teachers at my school were able to say, you're done, go to the library. And down there, I was able to create, I was able to read. It was a safe place for me. And I know my beautiful wife, who taught in Boston for over 34 years, the last school that she was at was one of that 40% of schools that did not have any library. Well, they had a library, quote unquote, but it was actually a cage where they stored books. It wasn't a place where kids can go and explore and find books. So I was really excited when you came to me with this idea. And you've interviewed librarians all across the United States. Is that right?
Yes.
This is exciting. Who are we going to meet today?
Today we're going to meet Lea Nerby, but she goes by Lea, and she's a librarian at Plum Point Elementary School in Maryland.
And Lea has the cutest blue hair ever.
Yes, I love it so much. It looks awesome.
All right, hey, Lea, Nicole, before we jump into our interview with Lea, what are we going to call this series?
It's actually inspired by my first email with Lea, where she said the library is not a quiet place anymore. So the series is called The Library is Not a Quiet Place Anymore. And I think that really sums it up so well, because it's even more than just reading, and it's more than just a room of books. It provides so many resources to students. It has STEM activities, emotional learning, art activities, and it really is such a great place for students to go. So I think that really sums up what all the librarians I interviewed had to say.
So without further ado, here's Nicole and Lea.
Great. And I know that you mentioned in the beginning of your email that you started off as a gen ed teacher and then a special ed teacher, and now you're a school librarian. So I was wondering if you could start off by talking about your journey from teacher to school librarian and what made you make that jump.
Absolutely. I started out in northern Minnesota southern Minnesota, I guess. I started out as a classroom teacher. I always wanted to be a teacher. My dad was a teacher. I come from a family of teachers, and that was what I wanted to do. And we were probably going to live in Minnesota forever. And then September 11th happened. And my husband was with the North Dakota Air National Guard, and they actually had an alert facility at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. And he was deployed out to Virginia. And to make a really long story short, we ended up moving out here full-time to Virginia. And I became a classroom teacher out here. I moved around a couple of places with him. And then I started my master's. And I said, well, I was substitute teaching at that point because I was staying home with my kids. And then when we moved to Maryland, we were only supposed to be here for a year. And we ended up being here. It's 8 years later, I think, and here I am still. So I had to drive my daughter to school because we were kind of in the wrong zone for her. So I could only substitute. And I ended up taking a long-term sub position in special education because it paid a little bit more. And I thought, well, I can do this for a week. And I ended up staying there for the whole rest of the year. So I started November 1st. And then I stayed because once I'm in the classroom with students, they really become mine. And I couldn't hand them over, and then there wasn't anybody to take over, and so I just stayed, and then they ended up hiring me full-time. And that particular position was too much for me. I was going to school part-time online with the University of Maryland in my Master's of Library and Information Sciences cohort. And then I was working full-time as a special ed teacher, and I had to pass my praxis test, and I was sort of to get my certification and then to also figure out kind of which way was up. So I did not apply to keep that position the next year, but a half-time position opened up in first grade special education, which just kind of checked all of my boxes. And I discovered in the time that I was teaching special ed that I really just enjoyed. My specialty has always been kids that don't behave necessarily the way that we traditionally think of as what good learners look like in the classroom. And a lot of the time now we know that that's due to trauma, but that's always been my specialty, is making that connection with kids. And I could do that so much more in special education and help those kids that I could see for a couple of years. But I was already in my program to become a librarian, and I will admit, my supervisor will probably cringe, that I started really because I just love reading. I've always loved reading, and I love books, and I love bringing that reading and the love of books to other people. And I think that it's short of travel. Travel is the best way to expand your horizons, but we can't always do that. So you can live all these lives and have all these adventures through the eyes and the perspective of characters in books. And I thought, well, this will be great. I can read books to kids. I love to read out loud. And then in the program, I really learned how much more there is to library now, and just got more and more excited about all of the things that I could do and all of the ways that I can reach an entire school of kids instead of having just one classroom or a small group of students with special education needs, that I can meet with 600 of them in a week, and then I get to have those kids year after year, which I'm really excited about next year.
That's so cool that you had that journey and you still get to make the connection with those kids, and especially them. You mentioned that it's an elementary school, right?
Yes.
That, that's such a formative time, I feel. And, you get to see them turn into like people, basically. And I was wondering if you could just talk about what it's like working with elementary age students.
Go ahead.
Oh, and how they gravitate towards the library, because another thing I really wanted to do with interviewing school librarians is show that even if the libraries aren't getting funding, kids do enjoy them and they do gravitate to these spaces. So if you could just talk about the kids a little bit.
Absolutely. I love elementary age, and when I started out in general ed, I wanted to teach kindergarten and first grade. So those are my loves. I love that age where they have these aha moments and they figure out the pattern of reading, and all of a sudden they can read a million words. And I have taught older grades as well, and I love them for I can be very sarcastic and kind of funny, and they really appreciate that humor. So it's a different experience with each group that you work with, because they're at such different levels and they understand things in different ways. But the most fabulous thing about working with elementary kids is that they still are just good souls at heart. Their instinct is to be good and to try to make everybody happy. And, they have moments like we all do that we make bad choices, but they're still learning how to do that. I like the adults that I work with, but I could never work with just adults because they are already kind of set in their ways a lot of the time. And when they do things that I know that they shouldn't do, and we all know that they shouldn't do, I have so much less patience for that. when you're a little person and you push somebody else because you're frustrated, you're still supposed to be learning not to do that. So it's a learning opportunity, and they're really good at bouncing back and just seeing the potential in everything in the world. You introduce them to, for instance, one of my groups is my first graders are learning about pandas right now, and we're doing a panda escape room. And as soon as I pick up the book and show them what a baby panda looks like, they're like, whoa, it doesn't have any black. That's how big it is? Is that how big it is? It's so tiny, I could hold it. And it's just this world that has suddenly opened up, and they have a million questions about what they want to learn about it and what they want to do it. They're ready to jump in to anything that you're ready to do with them. And I love that enthusiasm. I'm kind of like that myself. I'm interested in everything, and I get right with them. I'm like, I didn't know that either. So I get to kind of learn with them, literally learn with them every day. And that's the best thing for me.
And I know you mentioned in our emails that, you know, being a new librarian, you also wanted to change the perception of the school libraries because it's really not a quiet place anymore. And you mentioned that the kids are so eager to learn anything. So I was wondering if you could talk about what it looks like to not be a traditional school library now.
Absolutely. And hopefully this is the way that we are heading. This is the way that we should be heading. Everything that I learned in my classes, that this is what the library should look like. I have a lot left to learn, but I feel like I was pretty successful with a lot of it this year. I have a whole bulletin board to my left over here of notes of things to do differently next year. But traditionally, when I was growing up and I went to school, we went to the library, we sat quietly on the carpet, we listened to a story, we checked out books from a section of the library. And I have clear memories of being very young, first, second grade, and being told you can't have that book because you can't read it. I said, well, I can read it. And my mom wrote a note saying, you know, she's read the other ones at home. She just wants the last one, but nope. Those books were not books that I was allowed to read. And that could have really crushed me. But I had a mom who was passionate about reading. And so we went to the library and she ordered books. So when we come to the library now, I'll give you a little rundown of what we're doing right now this week in my classes. And it's the second to the last week of school. So checkout is over, but I'll include that in there. Normally, when my kids come into the library, the first 10 to 15 minutes, they check books out. And I say they checked out books because I don't do it. My third, fourth, and fifth graders check out their books and check in their books on their own. They have their barcode for their library card. They have a self-service computer. They have 2 of them. And we spent time learning. Here's what you do. You scan, check in, you scan the book, you put it here. They take care of that all on their own. And oftentimes they're swapping books with each other and they don't have to go through me. So I'm free to help kids find things and move around the library and encourage, you know, maybe to get out of your comfort zone and try something different. So third, fourth, and fifth, they check out on their own. Second grade, they check in on their own. And then about halfway through the school year, we learned how to check out on our own. And first grade, about halfway through the year, we learned how to check in with help. And then we started checking out with help. And kindergarten, my school sets it up so that fifth grade has their recess time at the same time as kindergarten. So we can have fifth grade volunteers. So I get fifth graders every day in all of our resources who come down and they check in and out for the kindergartners. So then after we check out, we immediately go into a lesson, which we based in Calvert County. We based our library curriculum on the National School Library Standards, which are inquire, collaborate. Well, these are the shared foundations: inquire, collaborate, curate, explore, engage, include. Yeah, that's all of them. And then within that, we have the main areas are creating a culture of learning, creation and application, digital citizenship, and inquiry. So every lesson that we do has something to do with those. And then we try to integrate with ELA or math or science or social studies as well. So this week, my fifth graders listened to a story called Iggy Peck Architect, which is a hilarious little book about being an architect and kind of struggling with other people not wanting to let you explore things. And then I issued them a challenge of, can you build a bridge that spans the width of your laptop between 2 chairs? You only have these straws and connectors and paper, and that's it. There's no tape, there's nothing else, and it has to hold up a 10-ounce bottle of water for 15 seconds. and then go. So we watched a couple of videos first that talked about bridge structures, and we learned about trusses. We examined the trusses that are in the ceiling of our library, and then I let them go, and they in groups decided if they were going to work in groups or on their own. And then if they met that challenge, they expanded it to 2 lengths of their laptops, and then 3. Nobody was successful with 3, but we had a lot of success, and they learned a lot of stuff through that trial and error. Now, my 4th graders are doing, they read Rosie Revere Engineer, and they're doing Rosie's helicopters. So it's a little paper helicopter that they fold, and their challenge is to modify the helicopter in some way to make it fall more slowly. And then after they modified, I climb up a ladder and I stand on the top of the ladder and I drop their helicopters and time them on my cell phone. And they get to take their helicopter and then go back and try, okay, what did I do that worked and what did I do that did not work? And they're learning off of each other. My 3rd graders are building Lego rubber band cars, which was a total failure. The first time I looked at it and I thought it was a great lesson. I shared it with the kids and it absolutely did not work with my first group. And I told them, I said, well, that did not work at all. We didn't have the things that we needed. So I went back to the drawing board. And for my second group, the second day, we did popsicle stick rubber band cars. And it sort of didn't work. I tried it beforehand and I couldn't get anything to stay on. And it's hot glue, so I didn't want to give it to them. So what we did was we processed through it and they kept throwing out ideas for me. We'll do this. And I would go and glue it and then we'd come back and try it. And we did actually get our rubber band car to go about 6 inches. And they left with all of these ideas that how they're going to do it. And I did post for them on my library website. Or through Schoology, our app, a way that they could try to get it home. So they're doing a lot of that collaboration, which especially after the pandemic, we need that collaboration. That's all what life is about is, can I work with other people that I might not want to work with because I don't get to pick who I work with. And we have to learn how to say, you know what? Yes, we will try your idea. And in my head, I can think your idea is terrible and it's not going to work. But I'm going to keep that in my head and we're going to try yours. And then I might say, all right, well, that one didn't work. I have a different idea, but I have to say it in a polite way and I have to be able to follow through. And I most importantly have to be able to say, I thought your terrible idea was a terrible idea. And I was wrong. Your idea really worked. And they're getting a lot of that, and that the inclusion of other people, just all of it. And it's fantastic because they come in and they read these books and then they want to know, well, how else do I build a bridge? And we can go from there to say, well, here's the bridge building things and here's architecture books and here's where you can find it in our database. So they come in and my library is destroyed 5 times a day. My kindergartners are doing we're doing walking water. So we have different cups of colored water and we put paper towels in between. So one end is in blue and one end is red. And I tell them we're going to make the water move from one side to the other and I'm not going to touch it. And so we watched the water climb up the sides and then we watched it mix and they were just so surprised that it changed colors. And then I actually coordinated with my art teacher, which is something we're really looking forward to doing more of next year. She does a whole color changing unit. So she loaned me some watercolor paints. And after we did the color changing experiment, they got out paint in the library and they painted and tried to make the colors that happened during our experiment and then tried all these. Oh, we got teal. That was a big one. Can we match your hair? We got the color of your hair. We got the color of your hair. So, I mean, there's stuff going on all the time and there's kids, climbing up on chairs. I have to keep reminding them, come on down. I will climb the ladder. You just test your helicopter from here. And I have an open library. So 2 sides of my library are hallways right in. So people are always walking past and they're like, what's going on in here? Other kids are asking, what are you doing in the library? Can I come back? And that's really my goal is I want it to be the heart and soul of the school where everybody feels like they can come and they can be represented and they can explore the thing that they are interested in whatever way that you need to explore it.
I just think that's so wonderful. All those activities sound so fun to me, and I know I would have loved to have had that when I was younger. When I went to a Catholic school when I was younger, so from preschool to 8th grade, I had the same school. and we only had library time for 1 year in second grade, I believe. And we would just check in and out of book, and it only lasted about 3 months. And then you could never go in the library. Like, we weren't really allowed to go in there. And they just had tables. So if you had to make up a test that you were absent for, you would go in there to do it. We didn't have a librarian. There really wasn't any of that. And hearing those stories, I'm like, wow, I really wish I would have had something like that. It seems like I missed out. And I know me going to school was like years before all of this, but I just think like the inclusion and working together, I think I definitely would have, and I know a lot of people I was in school with at the time definitely would have benefited from that too.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, I know you mentioned in your email, like the resources that the library offers, like the computer coding, and I don't know if you call it this specifically, but a lot of what you were talking about in the email reminded me of social emotional learning that I've talked to another librarian about. So I was wondering if you could talk, and I know you mentioned like the information science, like citing sources and finding those things. So I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. I personally, this is my own philosophy. This is not part of Calvert County's direction about library, but my personal philosophy coming into this is that my job is about 70% information sciences and about 30% teaching you and encouraging you to love reading. And I say that because you get the love of reading in a lot of places. It's really easy to tell. If you want to see how many kids love reading, pick up a book and start reading. 90% of kids are instantly at your feet. Can I see the pictures? Can I see? They want to know. They want to hear the stories. And I try to do all the different voices. I have the kids, I don't sit in a rocking chair. We sit in kind of a U, and I walk down one side showing the pictures and then up the other side so that everybody gets to be in the front if they want to. But 70% of my job is that information sciences, because we don't learn the same way that we did in the past, and we don't use information in the same way that we did when I was going to school. When I went to school, we learned facts, and then you took those facts and you took those formulas that you learned in math, and you took that, and then you went out into the world and you had this base of knowledge in your head that you could use. And they told us, this is kind of a joke for everybody talks about, but you won't have a calculator in your pocket. Well, I sure do have a calculator in my pocket. And I have the whole library catalog that I used to have to ride my bike to the public library and look through the card catalog to get information. I have it at my fingertips. So we no longer work in jobs where we have to come in with this base of knowledge that already meets the requirements. We now have jobs that are, what can you learn? What can you bring? Can you find the information that you need in a timely manner? And can you prove, here's a huge one, can you show that it's good, valid information? It's not just somebody's blog that you thought, well, I kind of know her. She's a friend of my cousin's and my neighbor's dog walker, so I believe her. Can you validate? Is it good information that I can use? So in the classroom, they're still learning a lot of that base knowledge that you need to succeed. And in the library, we're learning, how do I find out if it's good information? How do I figure out what I need to know? And then how I need to find that information. So we talk a lot about using good sources of information. My latest little brainstorm is, everybody's very into TikTok right now. And I love the organizing videos of the refrigerators. So I presented to the kids the difference between doing a Google search and doing a database search. And I showed them two different refrigerators. And one is like just packed with all these takeout containers. There's a American flag towel in there. There's something that looks like it might be moldy. So this is what happens when you do a Google search. Google brings you back everything that might have anything to do with the words that you used and everything that it thinks you might be willing to buy or link to and pay for. So that American flag towel in there might be from 7 searches ago that I was looking for a towel, and they're still like, hey, did you want to buy a towel when you were looking for information about pandas? Whereas the organized TikTok refrigerator, it's got all the little clear bins, and there's apples in one, and there's cheese sticks in one. That's what a database is, where we can say, this is my snack refrigerator. And we go to the snack refrigerator and say, I would like a fruit snack. Oh, well, there it is. There's apples in this drawer, and there's fruit in this drawer. And I kind of, to help them see, this is why we come here, because somebody else already got rid of, they curated, which is one of those National School Library Shared Foundations is curating. Somebody went and looked and said, let me get rid of all the advertisements. Let me get rid of all the stuff that is not really about what you were asking for and just give you the good stuff. And I even told them that, you know, there's plastic food in that Google refrigerator, because if I Googled snack, there are plastic snacks that go, you know, in kid kitchens, but somebody got rid of all of that. And then we use that to show them, here's how we find the good information. And a lot of what I do, the things like the engineering and the helicopter, is presenting them with a challenge that they say, but I want to know more. And I say, great. How do you find that? Where do we go? What do we do? How do we decide if that's good information or not? And then we've taught them those ways to go and search for things and to find the information and validate it. So I think it's just a huge part of my job, and it's the most fun part of my job, because I get to be a part of all of the new technology and the things that they're doing. You know, they come and talk to me about Minecraft, and that's, well, how can you find that information? Did you know that there's a library in Minecraft? That now, I just read about that. There's a library in Minecraft, which is a worldwide accessible place. So now people who are in places where they can't have free access to information, they can still get into Minecraft and go to the library and check out books that have been banned for them, so that we can spread that information that they want to see.
Wow, I did not know that. That is so interesting, because I've been reading a lot about the book bans that are happening right now. And I did just want to bring them up in our conversation, because I have read that a lot of school libraries, I know that like some PTA organizations, they're trying to take away books that are, and there's nothing wrong with these books. They're inclusive, they promote diversity, and what you mentioned before, that kids do love to read, and I grew up loving to read, and I didn't have a school library, but I definitely frequented the public library. I would take out like 30 books at a time. I would read the whole series. I was probably the only kid in there, but it really does, like, things that you wouldn't know or that you didn't experience, you would learn them through these books and through these characters. I know you mentioned before, like, traveling, but you can do that in a book. And I remember when I was in third grade, I wrote a whole essay. We could write about whatever we want. And I was writing, I love when the power goes out, because then everybody has to read and you can just go somewhere else. Like, you can read, my favorite were the fairy books. I don't know if you know those, but they have the fairies on the cover. Those are my favorite. And so it makes me so sad when books are being banned, that not only would it be like a fantasy, but so many kids that feel like there's something wrong with them or that they don't fit in, they can really find comfort in those books. And I don't know if you've had any experience with having books pulled from your library or making it an inclusive space. So if you could just talk about your experience with that a little bit.
I would love to. I have been very lucky this year to not have anything really challenged or pulled. And Calvert County has just recently sort of publicly again stated their mission of inclusiveness and inclusivity for all people. And that is regularly represented in the library. We have part of our mission is to make sure that when we are developing our collection, which is a fancy way of saying that we're buying new books, we don't just go and buy anything. We look specifically for things that are missing. Like, I happen to know right now, as I'm going through inventory at the end of the year, that my planet books are pretty old and they're beat down and we don't have very many of them. Like, we need new updated books. So they're on my list of, these are things I need to look for next year. And we look specifically for books that represent people who may or may not be in our community, because and I cannot think of the article, the name of the article that talks about windows and doors. Have you heard about that? About library?
I have.
Yeah, so we talk about windows, that we want to see a window to be able to see into other places and other lives. That's like seeing through someone else's perspective brings you so much more information. When you're looking outside, it looks different than if you're seeing it through a character's eyes and you're living through it. And then we need mirrors to reflect the things that are happening for kids. And often if you have a child who's from a different country, speaks a different language, maybe has differing abilities, it's really nice to see that represented for them so that they feel like they are not alone. And that is something that we work really hard to do. We read earlier this year, the Maryland Association of School Libraries does the Black Eyed Susan Book Award every year. So that's our state book award by the Maryland Association of School Libraries, obviously. And they put out a whole list of recommended books. And then the kids, we read them to the kids. And then the kids get to vote. And one of the ones that we read this year was I Talk Like a River, which was about a little boy who stutters. And he never says that he stutters until the very end, but he talks about this tree growing out of his mouth. I'm getting chills again thinking about it, because reading it to kids, I had several kids who said immediately, I stutter, I do that. And at the end, his dad takes him down to the river and he shows him that, sometimes the water is really calm and smooth. And sometimes it's swirling and bubbling and going back on itself. And it's all still really beautiful. And it all gets where it's going. And he tells him, you talk like a river. And he's able to take that and go back. And it was such a moving thing to see kids say, like, that's me. And also to read, we have a couple of books that specifically that really made a connection with kids this year. One of them is Sulaway, that I had several of my little girls who said, like, she looks like me. I have hair like that. I have skin like that. And you read about it when you're in classes and you read about it in articles, but to see them literally lining up for this book and making this little, okay, I'll pass it to you. And when you're done with it, you can check it out. And then when you're done, that and seeing how they were reflected in their own work or, in their own library was pretty amazing and just makes me want to look a lot more. I actually put in for a grant to get it was like $3,000 to buy specifically a whole bunch of books that are from the We Need Diverse Books website. If you're not familiar with it, it's a fantastic source. And I did not get the grant, but I have another grant lined up right now that I am writing to see if I can get those. And I have a great budget. I love my school and my budget. I'm able to get a lot of books for them, but I always want one more.
Definitely. I understand the book buying addiction myself. And when you mentioned the quote about windows and mirrors, it sounded familiar. And then as you were talking about it, I remembered in my semester at college, I was working at a radio station doing stories. And that's kind of how I got involved in the school librarian project and just basically like this whole children's literacy series. And I was doing a story and I spoke with Brianna Perkins, and she started an organization called Lit for Black Kids, totally by herself. Have you heard of it? Or
no, but it's probably on my list of sources that I've gotten from We Need Diverse Books.
Yeah, and she started it herself, and we had a conversation about it, and she mentioned that quote. And her whole mission is to take books by Black authors with Black kids but Black joy. So it's not always the typical narrative that you see. And I got to talk to some of the authors and the community that she created. And she also mentioned that, these were books I wanted when I was younger. And then to have the kids say, oh, I look like that, or even the smaller things like my teeth look like that and my hair looks like that, because it really does make a difference to see it. And I also think even if they can't relate to it, I know I've seen some books where they get banned because a character in the book will have two moms or two dads, and even if that's not what your family looks like when you're exposed to it, it's not like you said before, elementary age, they are just good people. They are good souls, and they don't have all of that hatred or bigotry or any of that. So when they see it, they just say, oh, that's just a different family. And it doesn't disrupt their entire life. Like, they will be absolutely fine. And they become so accepting. And I love that your school, and I've only talked to one other librarian, but they've also had the same experience where they have books of all identities, of all circumstances. And I really just want people to know that. And just the stories you were talking about when reading with the kids, that I feel like so many people need to hear that because,
have motion sensitive lights.
that's happened to me multiple times when I was at school too. But I think people really need to hear that because that's exactly why the libraries need to continue to be funded and books need to be given to kids. And I was wondering, I've been closing out my interviews with all librarians about if there has been, like, I know we talked a little bit before about the reception from the kids and you were mentioning the stories, but even just them like looking in and being like, I want to come in, or just them feeling like it's a safe space for them. I was wondering if any of your students have had that type of experience.
I would say all of them. I would like to think all of them. I certainly have kids who tell me on a regular basis, I just want to stay. Can we stay a little bit longer? And that's been kind of my measure is, our schedule is set up so that I have a couple of minutes in between classes when one leaves and the next one comes in. And I kind of judge how my lessons are going with the kids by how often I have to like literally push them out the door. I'm like, come on, I'll clean up for you. You gotta go. We got another class coming in. And I have had some kids. I have a poster called I Wish My Librarian Knew. It was just supposed to be one activity, but I stuck it up on a bulletin board and it's just stayed there all year. And the kids put up requests for me. They say, like, I want these books, because oftentimes they're talking to me and I'm doing so many things. I'm like, I will not remember this. So I tell them, like, write it on a sticky note, go stick it on the poster. And I regularly try to go through and pull down and say, okay, oh yeah, we wanted these kind of books. And I try to go back to them and then tell them whether we can get those books or not, if they meet our collection development policies. But I often get things up there like, I really like the library. I feel it feels fun to come to the library. I want to come back. I just had a student today, I almost cried, who I said, the next time that you come to me will be the last time that I see you for this year. And he said, well, we get you next year, right? I want to keep you for next year. I was like, oh. And that's, as a new resource teacher, this is other than special ed when I only got to see a couple of kids, but I could see them more. You're never guaranteed that you'll see them more than 1 year in a row. Like, I'm really excited about seeing how those kids who I started out with in first grade and in kindergarten, how they come back next year and they look so different. And I've had a lot of teachers tell me this year that it's been a lot of fun to pick kids up from library and have them come back and they're talking about it all the way down the hall. Or I get one, because I see 5 classes a day, well, 6 most days, but I only see one of each grade level. So I get one will come in and a 5th grade class will come in and say, we already know what we're doing today because everybody's talking about it. And I'm like, yes, got it. I've got them talking about the library outside of the library and they want to do what we're doing. So they come in and they're like, do we have to check out? I'm like, yes, I want you to check out, but also we will have time to do the thing. So that's kind of how I've been in my first year judging it, is that they seem like they don't want to leave. And I do try to make the library, like I said, I don't have walls, and I really wanted to make the library the heart of the school. And my principal, when she hired me, was fully on board with that. And so every time that some groups come and says, well, can we use the library for, the volunteer reception before school starts? Absolutely. Can we use it for this baby shower? Absolutely. I don't feel like that is my space. This little corner that I have in my office, this is my space. Out there, that belongs to the school, and everything in it belongs to the school. So if you need to borrow a chair, borrow a chair. If you need to move the couch for your meeting that you're having, great, go for it. People try to put things back, but I said half the time we're moving things all over because we're building bridges or we're racing cars or whatever. So I have sort of a vague place where furniture goes, but I'm not going to get too overly concerned about it because I just say to the kids, hey, just move things where you need to move them, and they take care of it because I think they know, like, this is our space. We can get the materials that we need, and we can get the books that we need, and we can come in here whenever we want. So hopefully, I wish that I had a flexible schedule where I didn't see every class, a class like that only once a week, that I could have a little bit more space and time where I could go out to classes or have kids that could come to do like a book club or other things like that. And I'm looking at that for my schedule for next year to get even more kids into the library.
That's so exciting, and I think that's such a great idea, and I especially love having the poster. So it's kind of like the library is being tailored to the kids, and so
Exactly.
it really is their space. And I love when you mentioned that it's the heart of the school as being like this community space. And thank you so much for everything you shared today. You were a perfect guest, and I feel like you really, everything that you mentioned was exactly what I envisioned for these episodes of the podcast. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm really excited to have participated and to hear the other interviews. I'm always looking for more good ideas.
Yes, definitely. I'll be able to email you once the episode is up. And thank you so much for your participation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Hey, Nicole, what an amazing librarian. Lea is so much energy. I mean, I'd love to be a student at her school.
Me too, definitely.
Yeah. What was the one thing that stands out most in your mind from your conversation with Lea?
It was definitely towards the end of the interview where she said she strives to make her library the heart of her school, where it's a place for everyone. And I think just having that safe space so that way a lot of kids have somewhere to go whenever they need, and it really being a community space that students can use for their events. They could use it to read, explore their identity, just so many different uses for the library. And I think that was just a really great takeaway.
Yeah, and I think that this was a really great interview. I can't wait to hear the rest of the interviews in this series. Nicole, thank you so very, very much for putting this interview together.
Thank you so much, and thank you to Lea for being a great interviewee.
Yes, and thank you so much to the rest of my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Mirabella Q, Rain Pan, and of course, I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me, and most of all, Nicole and I, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.